All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Elephant in the Room podcast. If you're new here, we are a podcast that loves to explore topics like the UFO phenomenon, the possibility of alien life, and all the other various mysteries of the universe. I am Ariel, and this is my amazing co host, Chris. And we have a really exciting episode planned for today. We are actually launching a new series today. And it's a series that's aimed at inviting the participation of the UFO Twitter community. We believe that everyone's insights and research can contribute to the broader understanding of this topic. So we're excited to invite some community members on, see what they have to say, learn from their perspectives, and specifically do some deep dives on some UFO cases. So, for the inaugural episode of this series, we are inviting community member Dove on, and she is going to tell us about the Kingman, Arizona case. And I did a little research on it, and it's sometimes affectionately called Roswell's little brother. And it really is a case that doesn't get enough attention. So we are excited to bring Dove on and have her tell us a little bit about it and shed some light on it. So let's bring Dove on. Welcome, Dove. Oh, you're muted.
Muted.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me on. Sorry about that.
No problem. Welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you. Like Ariel said, we really wanted to do this new series where we invite members of the community on to talk about some of their favorite cases. And I honestly don't even know if this is a favorite case of yours, but I watched you post on it and I was super intrigued because it's not a case I've dug into. So I am like, I get to sit at the feet of this teacher and listen and learn. And so I'm so excited. Before we dig into the case itself, which I know you have a really great deep dive, so we'll want to focus on that. But tell us a little bit about your tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into the topic and how you became a researcher and a little bit of your story, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I've always been kind of interested in mysterious, anything that intrigues, the imagination and the wonderment of a lot of different topics. Personally, my background, I'm a worker, I'm a mother, living, and I do this in my spare time at night, usually, because I'm a night owl. And I will say in the last year, it's really kind of taken on its own life form, I guess you could say. I've really dove in a way that I never have before. But as far as what kind of got me into the UFO topic, it was probably without a doubt, like many people, Dr. Stephen Greer, seeing his disclosure documentaries. And then very quickly, I found Linda Moulton Howe. I became obsessed with ancient aliens. I thought that just some of the things that they would talk about on those episodes were very intriguing to me. I still will. I like to watch some of those old episodes back. And I've always found the UFO phenomenon interesting, as well as like ancient megalithic sites and an ancient history, things that are out of place, that don't make sense, that aren't in context. And obviously a UFO showing up doesn't really fit into our context. So that's one of a major, intrigue for me. So yeah, that's a little bit of, and then I slowly just started picking up books and watching more podcasts. And then when the disclosure efforts really kind of ramped up in 2017, I took note of that, with Lou Elizondo, To the Stars. And I thought that was really beautiful to see, frankly. I really love that. I think that I'm kind of passionate about grassroots efforts and, building up the people and, a movement trying to accomplish something, right? I love that. So that spoke to me. And besides that, and I've just been trying to stay up to date on current events, which is, as we move along with the disclosure efforts, is very difficult to do now.
Hard.
Yeah. So, and then, so when I find something, I just go down different rabbit holes and, kind of ferret out whatever I can to try and make sense of it.
I really find that interesting that you're one of the first people I've spoken with that got into it before 2017 and through 2017, as far as a relatively newer researcher, what shift did you see that you took note of?
Well, prior to 2017, or connecting on social media regarding the topic is a pivotal change for me. As far as what you're seeing, what you're hearing, engaging with other people, it used to be for me more of a just, taking in media, right? So watching documentaries, listening to podcasts, and then starting to interact with other people is where you see, and connect with people. It's a wonderful thing. But it's a lot busier now. There's a lot more to consume and a lot to keep up with. I find it difficult. I'm not up to date today, probably because there's so many moving parts with all of the efforts that are going on. So it just seems a lot busier, if that makes sense. A lot more to keep tabs on.
I agree 100%. I feel like it's become a full-time hobby pretty much in order to keep up with what's going on. And I always feel behind the times myself. And then I just try and remind myself that I don't owe anybody anything.
Yeah. I've seen Ariel post. I've seen her post before, like, I was busy working with my kids. What happened today? And sometimes you need to, that's the wonderful thing about having a community is you can have people, you can reach out to people to help you get up to date quicker, I guess.
Well, and sometimes you have to scroll and scroll and scroll to get to the meat of it too. And it's like, I don't have time for that. I don't have time to sit here and scroll for 30 minutes to, kind of piece everything that's happened. I need someone just to give it to me fresh, give it to me quick, tell me what happened.
Exactly.
Yeah, you want a bottom line, essentially,
yes,
is what we,
absolutely.
We need quick takes, bottom lines for the moms, for the busy, career people, life.
Yes.
All right. Well, I think that now's the perfect segue to dive into this case. We're just going to let you kind of take over the screen and share your thoughts and ideas. And then I'm sure Ariel and I will have questions along the way. Because for me, like I said, it's a relatively new case to deep dive into. So I'm excited to learn more. So go ahead and set up your screen however you need to, and we'll let you take off.
And I'm super excited because I hear that this case has bodies.
Ariel.
Case has bodies up the wazoo. And
can't wait.
We're going to have some preamble regarding the bodies. But yeah, let me pull up my little slides here and then I'll present. Okay.
Chris, you know what I'm about. Like, let's get to the good stuff.
the meat of it. Yeah. Sorry, pardon the pun.
Okay, so this is a rundown, play-by-play, I guess you could say, of the Kingman Arizona event. I'm choosing the word event strategically here. Mm-hmm. People call it a crash. It is not one event. It's over a series of days. So this is May 1953. It is a, quote, crash retrieval, and it is a lesser known case. And I interestingly heard you, Ariel, say that it's Roswell's little brother or some, I've never heard that before, but I kind of love that, whoever said that. But this case seems to be increasingly relevant. So it's becoming more and more relevant over time. That's why a lot of people post and share about it, I think, online, and you see a lot of content about it lately. So for crash retrievals, in case anybody doesn't know, one of the main researchers from the lore would be, I have a typo there, Leonard Stringfield, renowned researcher, and he has put out multiple books about UFO crash retrievals. And it's essentially defined as an incident where a UFO has crashed or landed, and both the UFO and any of its occupants are retrieved by military personnel who are dispatched to the scene. And if there are any occupants, dead or alive, they collect those as well. And they're placed into military custody, sent off to specific installations, which we have guesses about what those installations might be, and essentially studied under the highest of security clearances, security measures. So what do I got here? Research and discussion of crash retrievals was not as openly discussed in the earlier decades of ufology, so 40s, 50s, 60s, while there were crash retrievals during these times, it was not as widely discussed in, the community or ufology, as it were. The work was done. It was done so quietly because it was often scoffed at. And there was a lot of stigma and absurdity associated with it.
I have a quick question there.
Yeah, please.
So when you say it was scoffed at or that it wasn't talked about as much, do you think it was just they were really good at keeping a lid on it and that's why people didn't talk about it as much? Or was it just more the stigma?
I think it's a healthy mix of both. I think the stigma was way worse then than it is now. Well, in a sense, because there was a lot more, discussion of atomic energy and what are, you look at pictures from the 1950s and you see these like vintage photos of UFOs and like, this is our future. And, but as far as like, I guess I don't really have a great answer for that. I think it was a mix of both. Secrecy was definitely being established during that time, clamped down on. And I do get into that a little bit about the nature of secrecy during this decade of the 1950s coming out of World War II, because that plays a huge role in what happened. So a lot of everything basically that I'm talking about has been researched. A lot of it has been researched before. Leonard Stringfield, the infamous, famous, amazing Leonard Stringfield. Harry Drew is one of the premier Kingman UFO event researchers. So I wanted to shout him out. Raymond Fowler is one of the most important witnesses to this event. It is his work and diligence that brought this forth in 1973, I believe. Also, Michael Schratt, the crash retrieval connoisseur. I'm sure you guys are familiar with him. He does podcasts and YouTube videos, and he does amazing renderings. He gets that stuff put together to kind of give people a really good idea of what these scenes look like. I think it's very cool. And then the illustrious Richard Dolan, of course, which we all know. And, I know Ariel loves Dolan. So do I. He's so great. He's such a good sense maker. Anything I'm like, you just listen to him for a while and you're like, of course, that's exactly right.
Yes, I did that yesterday. I was like, wow.
He's amazing. He's amazing. Yeah. He's one of my faves.
Yep, absolutely. And he's been in that, he's been in this for decades too. He's gotten key testimony from witnesses that, amazing to get that stuff on the record. A couple other people, I don't want to like blast their photos on here or anything, but like from the UFO community on Twitter, Planet Hunter, that's Juan. He's an amazing researcher. Richard Geldrich, who I believe spoke at Contact in the Desert. His work is incredible. He's vetted some of these witnesses and ran down some really detailed information that helps verify their identities and stuff. George Knapp has covered this case, Stephen Greer. So I'm pulling from a lot of different sources here. So just wanted to shout them out. One other thing, this is a book that was written by Adam Goldsack, and he is a member of the UFO Twitter community. From my understanding, he's one of like the original and founded the hashtag #EndUAP secrecy. He's not a professional writer. I don't believe he categorizes himself that way, but he wrote a fictionalized version of the Kingman crash. And this just came out less than a month ago, maybe a month or so. You can find it on Kindle. I believe I found the digital copy, and it does a really good job of putting you, in a story. It puts a bunch of context around it. It narrates everything so that you can really get in the feel of this, 1950 mode of thinking. So I just wanted to shout that out. He has a website. I believe this is his website, unidentified.net, and he has posted, about Kingman too.
Very cool.
So, shout out to him. That's very cool to do that. And that's kind of one of my favorite ways to learn about the phenomenon, about, our history regarding it would be, a narration.
Narrative.
I think it does a good job, even though it's fictionalized. It's a great way to tell a story and tell the truth. So
very cool.
All right. Kingman Event is a series of events from May 18th to May 24th, 1953. Harry Drew's book that he wrote about this was called 7 Days in May. Hard to find that book. And in a nutshell, this is 3 UFO events. And the saying goes, 1 landed, 2 crashed. Multiple researchers have uncovered different pieces of information about this case over the decades. And I, kind of ran down some of who those are. A couple different witnesses. And in May of 53, there was a UFO wave occurring actively during this time in Arizona and in the Southwest. An extremely important historical context to understand when we look at these events would be upshot, not whole. So this was going on in the background of all of this. And just a quick thing, a series of 11 nuclear test shots that were conducted in 1953 at the Nevada test site in Nevada, which is adjacent, hop, skip, and a jump from Kingman. The purpose of these military exercises were to prepare the U.S. military for the use of atomic, nuclear bombs in, should we go to war with the Soviets or whatever was going on. And there was an extremely intense veil of secrecy that lays over all of this, all of the people, the witnesses, the military, the government. And this is something that people took incredibly seriously at this time. The stakes were very high, especially in my eyes, like the older generation coming out of World War II. I mean, there was some atrocities there. So this is, the stakes could not be higher. Plus we're dealing with nuclear bombs anyways. So it's very serious. And so I kind of sum it up as the ends justify the means thinking. So moral concerns, ethical issues are superseded from what I've read about in sometimes very catastrophic and sad ways, in the name of keeping this secrecy. And ultimately, upshot, not whole, resulted in a lot of dangerous events that went on. There was exposure of thousands of United States military soldiers to deadly levels of radiation. Also civilians in the area. They're called downwinders is the term for them. I talk about them in a slide here. But yeah, caused a lot of damage, caused a lot of instances of cancer. And extremely sadly, there was a lot of infant deaths right after May 1953 in this area. One number I saw was 35 infant deaths because of the quick increase of radiation. And, it's deadly. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah, so the damage caused from these tests remained hidden for decades. They covered it up. Ends justify the means. That's secrecy. That goes to all of that. Okay, quick little thing here. Nevada test site is here in the photo. That's where they were setting off I believe all of these tests. And of note, in this lower right-hand corner of the Nevada test site is Frenchman Flat. That is a relevant area. And there was a different name, like a Harry or Annie or whatever, for each test. Harry is the test that seems to be the most relevant to the event in Kingman. May 18th, it was detonated, 1953. And I just included a little link here for information on downwinders. It's a sad read. So getting over to the first witness that I wanted to talk about, the main star, I would say, that fills in most of the information for us about this case is Arthur Stancil Jr. In the early days, in the 1970s, 80s, I believe up until the 90s, I'm not sure exactly when, he was only known as Fritz Werner. That was his pseudonym given to him by Raymond Fowler. I believe he gave him that, that pseudonym. Ohio State University. He graduated in 1949. This gentleman was employed as a civilian for the Air Force for the Air Material Command at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And he had a top secret clearance and he passed in 2006. And this photo is I don't think there's another photo of this guy. So I know that that's not a great pick, but that's what we got. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stancil. All right. So Kingman the Kingman of Crash was brought to the public attention by researcher Raymond Fowler, and this happened in 1973. And interestingly, this is actually prior to the 1978 resurfacing of the Roswell event. That's when Jesse Marcel, I believe, came forward and started to give accounts of what happened at Roswell. So this is even before that, that this started to get talked about quietly. Stancil, regarding all of the testimony that I'm about to quickly go over, he did sign a legal affidavit to this effect. And it was put out in a book by Raymond Fowler and in UFO name. Sorry.
So authorities were able to keep a lid on this for 20 years. When was the actual event? The 50s?
53.
53. Okay. Yeah. So about
20 years. Yeah.
Wow.
The only other thing that I've heard prior to 73 was Richard Hall, a researcher, might have gotten some testimony vaguely regarding Kingman. It's not super clear, and it's not as it's not quite as detailed as what Stancil talks about. All right, so this is Right Pat. Back in the day, Stancil's boss was an interesting fellow named Dr. Eric Wang. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this guy. He is, as far as reverse engineering during that time, he was a eminent scientist, very smart. I believe he came, or no, I don't think he came over with paperclip, but he's suspected of being part of the reverse engineering program of UFOs. Like, there's a lot of lore there. He's kind of a mysterious character, but he headed the installations division in what is the Office of Special Studies, where Mr. Stancil worked. We might come back to him in a bit, because
he might be connected to paperclip. That sounds familiar, but I'm not positive. We need to fact check that.
Oh yeah. It was either him, and I don't want to, that's an important detail, obviously.
Yes.
I don't want to, he was a close associate of Victor Schauerberger, who was a paperclip scientist. Okay. That might be the misremembrance of mine. So he was an associate of Schauerberger, and he was an associate of Dr. Vannevar Bush. Dr. Wang was. And Dr., I'm sure if you know the UFO lore, Dr. Vannevar Bush is in the Majestic 12 documents. He's a mysterious character himself. He had a lot going on. He knew a lot. So this is just a quick, this is from Richard Geldridge. I just want to shout that out real quick. Mm-hmm. He tracked this down. This is kind of just authenticating Arthur Stancil is who he says he is. Stancil was... while he was working at Wright-Patterson, he was advised that he was going to be loaned out to the Atomic Energy Commission. And we see this, we see the Atomic Energy Commission a lot in UFOs, crash retrievals, reverse engineering, secrecy, the cover-up, etc. And so he was lent out to work on Upshot Knothole. And during Upshot Knothole, his job was essentially to measure the blast effects on bridges and homes specifically built to run experiments on the effects of the blast. That's what he was doing there. So during the wave of sightings in May 1953, I just want to say that, put this out here really quick. A saucer reportedly, quote, came down on Monday, May 18th, 1953, in a remote rural area close to the town of Kingman. Now, the craft reportedly didn't crash, but landed and was undamaged. That last part seems to be corroborated over and over. Landed, and especially the undamaged part. Multiple witnesses say that. This date is coming from Harry Drew and his research. That's what he seems really sure of. I'm not sure, obviously, but that's what he settled on ultimately as the day the Kingman UFO landed. Harry test is on the 19th, detonates May 20th. As Stancil is working in Upshot Knothole, he gets a phone call from his boss, Dr. Edward Dahl, And he is told that he is going to be loaned out yet again on another special assignment in the next few days. And told that he can't talk about this with anybody. He can't write about it, not to say anything regarding this assignment that he's going to be going on. And then on May 21st, Mr. Stancil is taken to Indian Springs Air Force Base, also known as Creech Air Force Base. And he's joined there by 15 other specialists. From Indian Springs, they fly to Phoenix, Arizona. And they are in Phoenix. They're put on a bus with about 25 other people who were already there. These are scientists, specialists, top tier, smart guys, right? The bus windows are all blacked out. We've heard of that before, the bus windows being blacked out. Lazar talked about that. So he wrote, we rode for approximately 4 hours. I think we were in the area of Kingman, which is northwest of Phoenix, not too far from the atomic proving grounds in Nevada. During the bus trip, we were told by an Air Force full colonel that a super secret Air Force vehicle had crashed, and that since we were all specialists in certain fields, we were to investigate the crash from our own specialty and nothing more. So no curiosity. This is just an image via Michael Schratt of the bus. They tracked this down to the make and model by talking with Mr. Stancil of what that bus might have looked like. We disembarked from the bus one at a time as our names were called and escorted by the military. And I noticed as I was walking up to the vehicle, so the craft, that it was saucer shaped. It was about 30 feet in diameter, and the material looked like brushed aluminum. The entranceway was vertically lowered and apparently had jarred open. There was a light from inside the UFO, but I'm not sure. He wasn't sure if it was installed by the Air Force or not. So everybody was already there. A bunch of people were already there by the time Stancil got there. Here's an image. Again, Michael Schratt, thank you so much, of what was going on. And I want to point out these lights that they are showing us in this image were said to be extremely bright, blinding lights, for whatever reason, that they made a point that they were very bright lights shining down on this saucer. Here's a rendering again from Schratt. It was said it was seamless. There was no visible, means of propulsion. There is no fuel. There's no wings. This is seamless only until you get right here in the center where there's like a ridge with these like little slats on it. I don't think those were windows or anything. And then there's this little hatch underneath the leading edge here. So just wanted to share that as well. And then I included this because it's interesting. And, it's from Stringfield. It's a little map of Kingman. I just wanted to throw that in there as well. And then I put this in here. This is kind of cool. This is Harry Drew's, 7 Days in May. I don't know if anybody has this actual book. It's hard to find. Anyway. So going on with Stancil's testimony, my particular job was to determine the angle and the depth of the impact into the sand and how fast the vehicle's forward and vertical velocities were at the time of impact. Ultimately, I believe this comes out to like 1,200 miles an hour, 100 knots. That's what he determined based on his calculations, how fast this craft was going when it came down. And remarkably, no scratches, not a scratch on it, undamaged, which is pretty remarkable. Questions asked having nothing to do with our special areas were not to be asked. At the time of the incident, the idea that it may have been a UFO did not even cross my mind. I simply accepted the fact that it was a secret Air Force job or crashed vehicle. After the inspection, we were interviewed using tape recorders by military people, and we were told that we would be contacted back at our respective bases relative to proofreading. So they had to write out reports longhand. They weren't allowed to type about this. I was never contacted. We boarded the bus and I was back at the proving ground in time to go to work at 7 a.m. So he was get right back to it, 7 a.m. the next day. So that is his testimony in a nutshell of what happened. So I just kind of had like a little roundup here of the craft. And importantly, I didn't mean to gloss over this, but Stancil also says that he witnessed a humanoid body, approximately 4 feet tall with brown skin and wearing a silver metallic flight suit. This being was dead when he saw it. And he wasn't the only one that saw it. I guess it was very overwhelming. Some people had strong reactions to it when they saw it. He also, in the image of the Harry Drew, Michael Schratt one, there is a tent in kind of in the corner of the image. And that's where he describes that the doctors were, and where he saw, he understood that there were more humanoid bodies in that tent being examined. Honestly, the occupant aspect of this case is, I'm not sure what to make of it. So I'm just sharing what Stancil said. There's multiple accounts, so we're going to keep it pushing here. This date is wrong. I apologize. I put the 21st here. It should be the 22nd. So while all of this is going on, 3 reputable members of the community, one of them, I believe, of these guys is a pilot, witness 8 flying saucers in the sky on Thursday, May 22nd. And this is the this came from NICAP, I believe. Somebody saved this. It's just the publication into the local newspaper regarding this sighting. And I guess they hung in formation, and they were spotted for quite a while, looming in the area. And here's just kind of a blow up of what you're seeing. So this was, I believe, actually the sighting was on the 21st, and it was published on the 22nd. So Thursday. So then we're kind of jumping back here. This is the second UFO event, the first crash of 2 crashes. Limited data exists for this crash. This comes from researcher Harry Drew, and he claimed that a second object came down and crashed near the Red Lake, Arizona area. This is the craft, I believe, that was completely disintegrated, like beyond recognition, I believe. So that happened on the 22nd. Sunday, May 24th. Oh, wow, I put the second crash. So the second crash of the 3 events, second and final crash, is in the Hualapai Mountains. And there's, again, limited data. There's some anecdotal stories regarding this crash that I'll show you in a second, but researcher Harry Drew claimed that this happened again on the 22nd. Hualapai mountain range. And this is an image showing kind of an explosion and a fire that seemed to be going on. This I included. This is separate from Arthur Stancil. This is an account from Stringfield Abstract 6. It kind of muddies the water, not in a bad way, but this is from research Charles Wilhelm. And basically, he had a story that in April, this is a different month, April of 1953, he was flown to a destination unknown where it was hot and sandy. And he was inside the tent, standing in soft sand, blindfolded. And he was taken to a location where he saw a silvery metallic craft, 25 to 35 feet. So this checks out with Stancil's testimony. The exterior of the craft was not damaged. However, on this, what does it say? His on-the-spot 2-day analysis of the ship's metal using the equipment he carried with him. So this guy was Major Daly. This is kind of a confusing aspect because it mirrors Stancil's testimony so closely, but there are pieces of it that just aren't fitting. I'm not sure what to make of this. So it's just something I wanted to include for people to be aware of, that this exists.
So you don't think they were looking at the exact same object?
I don't even know if this is true.
Okay.
I don't know what to make of this. I mean, maybe. I really don't know. So this is a confusing piece for me. But maybe it is. I just am not sure. There's pieces of this case that I don't understand. But that exists, and it's in Stringfield's book about the case. So a couple more details about the Hualapai crash. There was a forest fire that happened probably because the UFO crashed, and a large area burned because of it. I found 14 to 16 acres were burnt, so that's quite a bit. Of the forest fire, locals in Kingman, about 36 miles away, reported seeing an aerial disc craft falling from the sky and crashing into the dense forest. And then we get into one of the stranger pieces of this case as far as anecdotes go. 2 strangers, allegedly posing as ambulance drivers, were seen wandering seemingly out of place. The theory is that these disguised extraterrestrials, occupants, were looking to recover several more of their downed companions. This is a rendering. I apologize. I don't know whose artwork this is. In front of the ambulance, ETs, strange beings that were observed in this area. This gets into the lore of this. I haven't brought this up yet. Sedge Masters is essentially a retelling of the Kingman crash retrieval in a sense. And they talk about this. It's not phrased in the same way, but it's telling the same thing, where 2 people come across these beings that came out of nowhere and they're just strangely out of place. How did the ambulance get up into the mountains while there's a fire around? It's very strange. Not sure what to make of this. I'm sorry, do you have a question?
No, I was just, you said something, referenced this, and I wasn't sure what you said. Referenced this.
Sedge Masters.
Okay.
I was going to talk about that in a bit. I don't have a slide on Sedge Masters because this is enough information as it is.
Sure.
Sedge Masters is another fictionalized retelling.
Okay.
Dolan, it was put out in UFO magazine in 1998. It's not long at all. It's very interesting to read, just to kind of get your head in understanding a crash retrieval operation, right? They go into how they recruit people. They go into what the psychological profile of those people that work in a crash retrieval operation, what that would look like. That's how I got into this case, was the Sedge Masters story. Dolan has done, Richard Dolan has done an episode about Sedge Masters. He talked with Engaging the Phenomenon on his show about it. In that story, they refer to it as Zodiac. And while we're down while we're down this Sedge Masters tributary, I just want to say a couple more interesting things about Sedge Masters. There were leaked emails from Kit Green. Who else was in those emails? I think Hal Puthoff, the Bigelow crew, where back in 99 or 2000, there's an email exchange where they talk about the Sedge Masters story that came out in 98. And they said that it's thinly veiled regarding, protocols, procedures, what have you. So that kind of gave the whole story a flare of, truth to it. So people refer to it. It's written by a man using a pseudonym, Greg Halifax. So that's interesting too. There's a connection to the Wilson Davis memos regarding Greg Halifax, because it's believed that the actual person behind Greg Halifax is Jeffrey W. Griffith, who's mentioned on the final page of the Wilson Davis memo. This is where this case is kind of runs the gamut. And if you read what it says, it talks about Mary Elizabeth Elliott. It talks about TRW. It talks about a lawsuit. And it is said that part of one of the stories told in Sedge Masters might be regarding Mary Elizabeth Elliott and a sighting she had of a UFO, and that possibly that is how this actual woman who worked for an aerospace company, founded, I believe, the aerospace company, that's what it's called. That's how she uncovered the reverse engineering program. I'm really not 100% on all of that, but there's a whole thread there.
Wow.
Complicated. All right. Bill Uhouse, I don't know if this guy looks familiar to you. He came up through Greer in the 2000 disclosure effort. Retired engineer, part of a top secret program to build flight simulators, which were used to teach American pilots how to control flying saucers. His testimony is amazing to listen to. He stated that the origin of the craft that they used to create these flight simulators was the Kingman UFO craft, which makes sense because it was intact,
Right. Fully functional,
operational. Bill Uhouse stated that he worked on a reverse engineering one of the UFOs that crashed at Kingman. He also worked with a live ET, who was referred to as J-Rod. Have you guys heard of J-Rod before?
I have.
Yes.
Okay. So this is a whole other rabbit hole, the J-Rod story, the origins, but it's, from my understanding, it seems like J-Rod possibly came from Kingman.
Oh, wow.
Either the landed, or not the landed, probably the second one. It is said, and I apologize for the confusion here, but the Hualapai mountain one that had the occupants wandering around, possibly J-Rod is from that crash. Not sure.
Wow.
And it's interesting that a lot of it connects. I don't know if you're familiar with Dan Bursich and his story, because he talked a lot about the J-Rod.
Is that the one that's a physician that supposedly, or no?
I don't know if he was a physician.
Oh.
No,
he's scientist, biologist. No,
I can't even remember what Dan Bursich's credentials were.
I'm sure.
Story was in. I don't even. Yeah, I don't want to get down a Dan Bursich rabbit hole too much, but he's kind of been. It's hard to find the old videos where he talks about everything that everything about the J-Rod being. J-Rod. Essentially, Uhouse. I do have a clip, but I don't want to take up too much time with it. This guy's testimony is worth watching. I can make sure you have the link to it.
Oh, that'd be great for the end, the show notes. If you can give us any links to cover at the end, we'll post those in our show notes. So
yeah, absolutely. This is worth watching and listening to. Eyes on Cinema has a great little roundup of the pertinent parts of his testimony. Okay, so I got a blank one here. Okay. This is actually the link, but he says a lot of interesting things. It's worth talking about. So the only other details filled in by Uhouse, which is important. This is a Michael Schratt rendering here. It was said that the landed UFO in Kingman, how they pulled it out of there was by lowering it via crane down onto this lowboy. And this was difficult to do. And there was something about, like, if they tilted the UFO in a certain angle, it got heavier, like just some very strange
physics.
Yeah, absolutely. So this UFO was so big that they couldn't get it like where it needed to go. They had to essentially bring in a barge or something like this big old boat here, and run it down the river. This is the Hoover Dam and Michael Schratt.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It is crazy.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So this is interesting because in order to do something like this, I mean, how many hands would have had to have been involved in this type of operation?
And the
secrecy. A lot. And they had to block down roads in order to get this craft. And the ultimate destination of this particular UFO is Area 51. That's where it's going. That's where the lore says that it went. And yeah.
Wow.
And this account of what happened here comes from Bill Uhouse. If you listen to his full testimony, very worth a watch.
And it really does make you circle back to those questions of, why aren't there more people coming forward? If there were people that saw this craft who were helping to move this craft, where are these people and why don't they talk?
Think about the level. Well, think about obviously post World War II, the level of loyalty and patriotism that existed in soldiers. You don't violate your oath. And if they were all sworn to secrecy, that in itself was enough to hold people back.
Well, what about deathbed confessions, though? I feel like if that was me, I would totally be like dishing on my deathbed. You know what I say?
Yeah, I know.
I think that's kind of what I see Bill Uhouse's testimony as. He's older. What are they going to do to him?
Right.
He might have talked earlier. I'm not sure, with Greer and stuff. There's some footage of him a little bit younger than he was in that photo. But I think some of it, I've heard some talk about how do you get the townspeople to stay quiet?
Right.
You can, there are ways, there's lore there too about, this is back in the 40s or the 50s. Well, they don't even have electricity running to their homes yet. They're still not, modernized, so to speak. So everybody can be quiet about what they saw. We'll hook you up. We will get you, your town all squared away and get you some amenities or, hook up your electricity. I've heard about that happening as well as a mechanism to help people stay quiet about what they know and have seen.
Interesting.
So yeah, just another rendering. Uhouse talks about reverse engineering flight simulators based on the UFO technology. So this is something that he built, I don't know what they refer to this as, a pylon. And you essentially hoist the UFO up on top of it. And, it can tilt and all of this. And he would get stuck in his attempts to build this. And when that would happen, they would talk with the J-Rod being to try and understand how the physics and all of the science works. Yeah. That's what he talked about. And this is Schratt's rendering of this flight simulator. What number are we at here? 43. So we're coming closer to the end. Bill Uhouse, vetting him was done by Richard Eldridge rather recently, kind of like a refreshed modern vetting of this gentleman. So here's a clip of him. That's him with the helmet on there in the photo. So he was who he said he was. He was well respected. And in the testimony that he talks about the flight simulators being essentially kind of mastered or completed, the reverse engineering of them by 1957, that was done.
Wow.
That's crazy. Yeah, it is.
That's really hard to believe, but I mean, the secrecy, when did everything change technologically in this country? Right around that time, everything just started taking off and shifting and wow, interesting.
Yeah. I mean, Corso, Philip Corso has talked about different aspects of recovered technology being, presented as not what it is, right? So it's escaping my mind really. Lasers, I want to say they say came from the UFOs. There's a couple of different things.
Some sort of detection. I remember hearing this just the other day too. Yeah, so interesting.
Absolutely. And then Uhouse's testimony, he talks about 4 occupants that were in probably the second event / first crash, or the Hualapai Mountain one. That's what I think. And he says that he had heard or been told that those 4 occupants ended up at Los Alamos, which is owned or ran by the Atomic Energy Commission.
Which my uncle worked for, my godfather.
Really? The Atomic Energy Commission? Like back in the day like that?
Probably more in the 60s. And I'm trying to think, maybe even before that, could have been the late 50s. I have to ask my dad dates, but yeah,
he worked.
No, it was top secret.
Oh, huh.
So no one knows what he did. Yeah.
Might be some.
Yeah, I know. Ever since, yeah, I know. I mean, and he was a former security for the military, and then went into that role. So to me, it's just always been like, clearly, he probably has some sort of connection to this.
Is he still with us?
No, we lost him. So, and we're not in contact with the family, so I have no idea.
They're
So,
out there.
anyway.
There's probably like a lot of people that were, especially, have you always been in Arizona or?
Yeah, well, I'm from New Mexico, but I live in Arizona now, but I'm from New Mexico, and yeah, so up in that, and I mean, I have family that work for Sandia Labs now and stuff. It's just, part of what everybody kind of does there.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Absolutely. That's cool though. I would be very curious to find out.
Ever since I got into this topic, I just immediately knew. I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea until I started getting into it. And I said, oh, the DOE is there.
Their paws are all over this stuff. All right. Bob Lazar, I just want to mention him. Not sure what to make. I believe Bob Lazar believes what he says. He seems, I would like to see the man vindicated. He talked about the crafts that he saw, and there was some thought and discussion that one of the hangars that he saw a craft in could have been the Kingman UFO, particularly, I believe it was Hangar 7, that Bob described a craft in that might have been the Kingman UFO. And that might have been used in test flights or something. I'm not sure. There's a lot of here. I just wanted to show this slide really quick, because when we talk about secrecy, cover up, and trying to winnow down where a program might be, that today's disclosure efforts might be, trying to glean, trying to figure out.
Right.
Just as a layperson who's not familiar with, too much about the government or the military or anything like that, I feel like they do a really good job at hiding things. Because just for example, I wanted to look into Bill Uhouse had mentioned Link Aviation was where he worked. And I quickly found how complex aviation history is as far as mergers and acquisitions go. Kind of like any historical, organization or company these days that's, a bigger successful. There's a lot of movement. So I just included a really quick rundown of all of the back and forth. And ultimately, 26 years later, after it was sold, it was repurchased by the original, one of the original people that 26 years earlier had sold the company. So I just wanted to point that out, that it's trying to follow aviation history and not necessarily where like a reverse engineering program would be necessarily, but probably they're good at hiding it with shell companies and just moving it around. It's hard to follow. So finally, modern context of the Kingman UFO event and why that's why I said it's becoming more relevant. So David Grush, we know who he is. He talks about non-human biologics, so occupants. He talks about recovered craft and defense contractors. Those are all things that are mentioned by Uhouse and by Mr. Stancil. So it's a enduring effort, it seems like, to get to the bottom of this. And then also, interestingly, this is Christopher Mellon in just not long ago. Sorry, I got another typo there. April 2024. Christopher Mellon, Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Defense for Intelligence in the Clinton and Bush administration. So this guy in a position to be aware of stuff like this. Sorry, one moment. He released a screenshot of a signal conversation that he had with a government employee. And in that screenshot, Kingman is mentioned. I have a slide of it right here. So this is a screenshot of a conversation that occurred in 2020. This is between Christopher Mellon and an unnamed government employee or official. I'm not sure. I'm making huge progress in getting into the crash retrieval program. He plans to meet with you at some point. Oh, sorry, blank and I. So him and somebody. The blank would be slack-jawed if they find out what we know. And then Mellon replies, and then this person responds, right now, we haven't gone that far back. We're dealing with recovered UAP that landed in Kingman, Arizona in the 1950s. We're vacuuming up as much info, something, get read-ons or get read in. And now we know the management structure and the security controls and ownership of the crash retrieval program. We also know who recovers the landed UAPs under what authorities. We also know that a still highly classified memo by the Secretary of the United States Air Force in the 1950s is still in effect to maintain the cover-up on UAPs. That's wild. And then he talks about the current gatekeeper is an SES, so that's Senior Executive Service. It's like a designation with some jobs in the government. So I just think
I'd assume that when this screenshot or text message was released, that really spurred a lot of new interest in this case.
Yeah. And this, I mean, what are we in June? This just came out. And in April 2024. So a couple months ago.
I thought
screenshot.
Oh my goodness.
This just came out.
So this is interesting because like you said yesterday, Ross Coulthart is getting ready to do a special out of a secret location in Arizona. And you said it looks like Kingman. And I'm like, oh, we're getting a lead on this story before they are. So that's so interesting, the interest that's peaking.
Wow.
Absolutely. One other thing I want to point out about this is this was cleared through Dopster. Mellon got permission to put this out. This is not like any rogue release of information. So that's really interesting, actually, that a guy
put this out.
Yeah. He did say in his Substack where he put some more context onto this that maybe the person that approved it didn't realize what they were approving, but you'd like to be very careful about what they approve. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I just find it interesting that the part he didn't cover up was 45 foot.
Exactly.
So he's asking about something that was retrieved that was 45 foot in diameter. And then they're like, well, right now we're focusing on this one.
Or it's 45 as in the year. So if you don't put the 19 in front of the 45, a lot of people just put that thing. I forgot what it's called.
Yeah.
So it could be referring to 1945. So not Roswell, maybe Trinity.
Interesting.
Yeah, Trinity. So interesting. Very interesting. And that's what I'm talking about when I say that it's getting more relevant. I think that the belief is through discussion that the Kingman craft is the quote prized pig, right? Mm-hmm. That this is the craft that, as far as a disclosure effort goes, that they can put, lore, witnesses. They have this classified memo that starts the cover up. They have the name of the individual. I have a slide on him really quick. I want to throw him in. This is the United States Air Force guy that penned that memo. And that is
still in effect.
Yeah. Yeah. This is him. Harold E. Tavold. Yeah. So interesting fellow. There's probably more to come on that. And then I just wanted to throw this in at the end, which I probably should have mentioned way before. There's kind of two different lines of thinking about what brought down all these UFOs,
right.
And what's the wave, what's this all about? Some people think, and this is what I subscribe to, that it was the Dirty Harry nuclear testing, because we know that UFOs are attracted to nuclear facilities. We have the Pantex UFO event that is talked about currently. And, upshot not whole with, they were multiple nuclear tests. So the UFOs love those. And so that kind of makes sense, especially when we hear about, there's a lot of lore around Starfish Prime, that the EMP from the Starfish Prime detonation brought down the UFO. It just brought it down.
Wow.
Sinks them out of the sky. And then Harry Drew, this doesn't come at the detriment of Harry Drew or his work. or anything like that. It's just my opinion that it was the testing. He said that there was a powerful experimental radar site set up around the Kingman area. It was like a triangulation. That's true. There was that was going on, and he believes that it was that radar setup that brought down the UFOs.
That's not the only time I've heard that. Now, I've heard that theory that radar brings down the UFOs, but I don't know that I heard it in relation to Kingman. Do you know if they think about that in other cases as well, like Trinity or any of those?
I think it would track more for Trinity that it was the nuclear test. Just guessing. I'm not super familiar with that case, frankly, but I've heard the lore as well that it's the radar. That could be true. I frankly am not in a position to know. Simple opinion that it would be the Dirty Harry test or the nuclear tests.
I mean, and radar isn't radar just so much more common these days? And so they must, I mean, the UFOs have probably found a way around that at some point, or else, I mean, they'd probably be falling out of the sky all the time if it was radar.
Absolutely. I kind of agree. Radar's everywhere now. So maybe they've evolved. Honestly, I'm really not sure. It's just my thinking and my feeling about it, that it was the nukes. That tracks more probably and makes more sense to me than the radar.
Right.
I think that's it for my slides.
Wow. That was fantastic.
That was long. Thank you so much.
No, I thought you did a good job. We're barely at an hour and you summarized all of that. It's so detailed.
Really. And there's still, I think, you can go even deeper into the case. I think there's other maybe more secondhand witnesses that can be explored. And it is just, there is layers upon layers upon layers. And it really does make you wonder, just how much do they have and how much do they really know? It just has to be, just exponentially more than we even realize.
Absolutely. There are secondhand witnesses. There is more lore there that I didn't include because I felt like when I watched videos personally that cover those cases, I found it to be very confusing because even when I got to that abstract 6, some of it is, some of it contradicts, and some of those witnesses have been kind of discredited over time. They were found out to be possibly lying. There was the wife of a man who she had said that her husband died in Vietnam and had written her letters that had said that he witnessed occupants. That's just one of them. And it turned out that she might not have been telling the truth. So I'm trying to keep it it's a confusing case to begin with. So I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. It doesn't come, I don't mean to leave anybody out or leave information out. I just wanted to keep it kind of as understandable as possible because it's kind of complex.
Wow.
But so what do you guys think? Oh my gosh. I want to be quiet for a second.
No. I was really impressed with the level of detail, especially on the different witnesses and just having an idea of I really just didn't know the whole context of the story. So knowing that they're taking a bigger interest now makes me wonder what they're going to be able, why? What is it about this case that's going to come out? And like you said, Ariel, we need something. We've been looking for some good UFO news to drop. So
I know I was telling Chris before you logged on, okay, Jeremy Corbell, if you have something in your back pocket, now's the time. Let's go.
Let's go. I miss Weaponized now that it's kind of not a regular thing. I know they kind of relaunched season 2 and it's going to be intermittent, they said.
Okay.
But it's just so nice to kind of convene over, disclosure efforts and, what's going on. And I understand that, if there's nothing to report on, why, whatever. But I miss regular episodes, right? But I think the only other thing that I kind of wanted to mention in Skinwalkers at the Pentagon and that second book that they did, what is the name of Lukatsky's second book? The other book on Skinwalker where they talk about the nuts and bolts aspect to the OSAP program. Blakatsky, they disclose in that book, approved by Dopser, that they have a craft of unknown origin and that they have breached the hull. They've
wow.
access to the inside of it.
Inside.
Now, in my mind, I try and think about Melon's comments that it seems like this Kingman craft is really relevant. Is that the craft that Blakatsky is referring to? I don't know. There's also Lazar and the sports model. That is not, I entertain that idea. It's a different description, different size. So that's not it, but I don't know. It's highly relevant. Again, I think it's going to be continuing to come up. Hopefully that's what Ross Coulthard is doing in Arizona, getting bothered by all the flies or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, he was slapping them away.
Poor guy. But yeah, I'm hoping that he covers it so we can get a professional, that can run down, boots on the ground, and to kind of look into it. I think it'll be interesting.
And it would be exciting if, he was able to track down, more sources or witnesses or just even connections to it. I mean, every layer we can add gives it more credibility.
Absolutely.
It makes it intriguing that he said he was from an undisclosed location. Why wouldn't you just say where you're from? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
yeah, it was kind of the only other thing I was thinking was maybe Aztec. Somebody suggested.
No, that's New Mexico.
Oh yeah, that is in New Mexico. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So no. Yeah, because we did that kind of road trip, and it's so sad. Last year I did a road trip to Roswell, and we went through Kingman. I had no idea the story. I was just kind of stopping at places along the way, but now I'm just oh my gosh, I wish I would have known this.
There is a photo that Harry Drew ran down of the actual location of where he thinks that the craft came down, and he found evidence of old 1950s canisters and
military
debris, I guess, not of the UFO, but of people that were encamped there.
Yeah.
But when I saw that photo, I was like, oh, it's kind of like if I were to go there and look at it, I would be I think I would build it up in my mind and I'd be like, oh, so it's the desert, kind of just like everywhere else in the desert. I lived in Nevada for multiple years. So
okay.
I do love the desert. So
yeah.
Beautiful regardless.
Well, this was awesome.
Yeah, this was great. Any last notes or anything you want to cover? I think you did a great job. I can't wait till the audience hears.
Yeah, and let our audience know where they can find you.
Yes, I'm on Twitter primarily, and at Dove_360 on Twitter. And I'm also on Instagram, but I'm mostly on Twitter.
One last question before we wrap up, and we try and remember to ask this, but we always forget. So if you had to say what the elephant in the room is in regards to this topic, what would you say it is?
Ooh, that is a good question. For me personally, my own opinion.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give an opinion that probably a lot of people don't agree with. Not necessarily, this is kind of elephant in the room for me. This is my truth.
Yeah.
When it comes to the cover up and secrecy and gatekeepers, I think that it's important that people remember what we talked about, the environment of secrecy and how important it was at that time. Mm-hmm. For us to Monday morning quarterback everything, and judge people based on current standards and the current, environment that we live in, where the threats aren't necessarily the same. So my elephant in the room is that I believe in nuanced thinking and forgiveness and trying to be as understanding as possible about people's motives and why they do what they do. Therefore, I don't really think that, and it's probably not even that rare, that the gatekeepers, as it were, need to be prosecuted for crimes or anything like that. I don't really think that. I think that there should be a truth and reconciliation. That's how I think that we will get to, as our best shot at getting to the wholest truth that we can. So it's not really a commentary on the phenomenon necessarily, but kind of in the
No, I think that's really relevant. And I've thought that before as well. I think, it takes really an incredibly special type of person to be a whistleblower, which is why there are almost none. And people are always surprised at secrecy, but I've worked with enough people that it's not hard. It's not hard to control what people do and say in public.
Yeah.
Just by having, their job in your hand, I mean, it's huge. It's a huge burden for people to be able to make a living for their families and to have a retirement down the road and all that. And I think people look at that and they say, okay, I'm going to be quiet. I have nothing, and it's not necessarily like something I may want to talk about might be, in my view, a moral compass that I feel like I should address, but I don't think that everybody has to live by those same standards. And times have changed. And I think that's really important, and, it is like, how do we look past those grievances that people may have kept secret and move forward so we can have disclosure? Because imagine the burdens they're carrying.
Absolutely. I think it's really complex and a lot of moving pieces to try and understand of like, how do we get here? I'm sure there's, a bottom line or whatever, but I think it's a culmination of a lot of different things. And hopefully we can get to some base truth, especially because, and I was going to mention this at the beginning, regarding the Kingman UFO becoming more relevant. I really hope that I would love to see more people be vindicated, even though they're not like Harry Drew or, he's gone, but to see his work and the people that worked on this in the past and the whistleblowers that came forward or people that get doubted or scoffed at or stigmatized, to see them vindicated would be so cool. That would be neat.
I love that. And I love that, you mentioned that in your bio, and I think that's a passion for you.
Oh yeah.
For experiencers to be vindicated based on their past stigmatism. It's a passion for me. I think Ariel as well. I mean, I think that is one of the reasons we do what we do, is to start talking about this topic more and to give people the freedom to think differently and outside of their box. Because I think so many people have had experiences and they really are so stigmatized that they would never talk about it. And so they're holding it in, so I think it's time for that. It's time that we move into a new era and get rid of the stigma. So,
and I think we're doing it. I think we're making progress, even like, just us having this conversation and more, hopefully a random person could see it, and find it intriguing. Yeah. That's how that's stuff.
Yeah. Well, great. This was a great show. I really appreciate your time, and we look forward to getting this out in the world and letting people hear a little bit more about this case. And I'm really proud that we're the ones that are going to be bringing it. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So much. It was super sweet of you to invite me on. I've never done anything like this before for UFOs. So thank you for having me. Thank you for listening and being patient. And, hopefully.
Fantastic job.
Thank you so much.
Great presentation. Very well done.
All right.
Bye, guys.